Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of the GI Huddle. I'm delighted to have a repeat guest back with us, Will Armitage from BestOdds. Will, thanks for joining us again.
Good to see you, Tim. Always enjoy these sessions, so looking forward to it already.
Yep, likewise. And I think we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff on both sides of the Atlantic, which is something that we kind of, I guess, quite semi-regularly do now, with so many developments and so much new competition among operators to talk about. But to start off, I'm going to give you a little platform to tell us a little bit, or as much as you want, about what the latest developments have been with BestOdds.
What haven't we been doing? It's very busy. We're still a small team. Been slightly acquisitive in the last few months since we last chatted. Bought a couple of little entities and sort of bolted them onto part of the Stram Entertainment, our top co, and made a few little small minority investments in other businesses as well. So as a business, we're scaling, happy with progress, but there's still a long way to go to get anywhere near any of the big guns in whom we have our sights.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, affiliate market very competitive. Operator market in the UK very competitive. That's my not forced at all segue into let's talk a little bit about the UK. I wanted to get your thoughts as you know. I guess as an affiliate you'll be partnered with operators, but affiliates do tend to give more objective views. And as a kind of independent third party affiliate, BetMGM's UK launch, just wonder what your views were on that kind of. It was quite. They made quite a big deal of it.
It was pretty left field there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that was one I didn't really sort of see coming. I mean, you look at, I'm sure we discussed before that I've used Odds Checker for 20 odd years to name a rival, and admire them. But suddenly to see BetMGM in there, it's like I didn't really anticipate would have actually come to pass. If you're the head honcho at BetMGM, you're looking at the UK, you're looking at your relationship with Entain and the collective there. But did you really think, okay, we can make a big name for ourselves in the UK market when saturation is a word that's bandied around often in terms of this, our local market here? And I was just driving today and saw big BetMGM billboards all over the place. I, for one, will probably try and have an account and see what happens if I have any luck with them. But another brand, it's more competitive. I'm trying to work out how many actually unique gambling brands are regularly with the Gambling Commission, and it's something I should have done my research on prior to this call, but I know it is a figure that is staggering. And yet another one is added to that roster. But they got the pockets, they got the brand. I'm not sure whether their marketing campaign will have much breakthrough, but if they're in all the right places and using the right affiliates, they will get out into the market. And let's see how they do on price and whether they're decent with their best odds or not.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the marketing campaign. Obviously, I mean, I saw Chris Rock on my TV screen. It may well have been during the North London Derby on the weekend. On a boat with a lion. I mean, makes sense. MGM, but
he's aged a bit, hasn't he? Though.
Yeah. I think I don't know if his encounter with Will Smith had anything to do with that, but I mean, you're right, he has. But obviously Leo Vegas also kind of lion branding, playing a big part in that deal. And it's interesting you mentioned Entain because they were very quick to make a comment and say that it doesn't really affect our business, or we don't expect it to affect our market share. But on market share, I mean, you mentioned that you don't expect too much headway from the advertising campaign. But I mean, we've spoken to the Leo Vegas CEO who says his quote was that the UK market hasn't really changed for about 20 years. And BetMGM are going to shake it up and try and make some meaningful change. I mean, do you think that can happen?
Where and how, frankly? Well, I mean, he said that. I'd love to hear what was the sort of concluding and sort of paragraph to what he said. Did he give a sort of modus operandi of this is how we're going to do it and this is where we're going to be different? Because I'd hazard, how different can one really be? How innovative can one really be? That's a conundrum for any new entrant who's got big coffers. Where are you going to be different?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. In terms of the nuts and bolts, as you yourself probably know, the top CEOs are very good at not leaving themselves exposed to giving too many details away where they might be able to be quoted on directly. But it's going to be tough to kind of have market share there. But how realistic do you think it is that they can take? I don't know, at least a small chunk of the market.
well, they're going to have a damn good try, aren't they? As I said, who else has got pockets as deep as they have to give it a crack? And you'd think there is a sort of resonance. You think of the Vegas Association, MGM, the Grand. This isn't sort of, hey, I'm Volvic Bet or something totally random, thinking what's the affinity of that, or any other sort of peculiar brand like that. This is BetMGM. There will be a brand familiarity to a certain extent. And so I think they will probably get cut through. And again, affiliates will do their damnedest, because sure as eggs is eggs, a new big brand coming to market is always an enjoyable exercise for affiliates to try and partner with and scale. So yeah, they'll give it a crack.
Yeah, so I mean, to your point about how can you actually innovate, and where's the room to kind of be that different when, as you said, it's age-old conundrum that the product, if it's a good product, it's homogenous. It's almost the better the product is, the more similar it's going to be to other operators.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my sort of previous career was in the online trading space, and one says it's a highly commoditized industry, and you can't really argue against it. And you'd hazard in terms of the betting piece, it is similarly commoditized. So where's that innovation going to be? But if they do have some, then of course, I said it again, I'll say it again and again, affiliates will be there to help if at all possible.
On a similar note, I wanted to ask you about Bet365. Again, a classic example of brand with high share of the UK market. I guess you could call it subtle tweaks. Even the kind of things like bet builders and shots on target, subtle tweaks in sports betting over the years. They seem to have gone really big on advertising the super boosts. So just boosting from 1 to 2 on to evens. For a casual bettor, when I see Mo Salah one shot on target evens, I'm all over that, because 9 times out of 10, it's coming in. But I don't know what your view, if you have any views, but on this particular point. But I just find it interesting that Bet365, I think, probably because they can afford to give the best odds in these and be generous with their super boosts, they're using that as a real point of differentiation, and just saying the new TV campaign is all about just we're never ordinary, and you just have these massive super boosts everywhere now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel, which I did entertain earlier, that sort of I know the bet boost piece has been with Labyrinth for a very long time. It's funny actually, Bet365 as a regular user, I haven't got a super boost. They've never dared super boost me, which I feel is a bit unfair. I mean, when I try and sort of hit them for something on a horse in some random country, that they don't then sort of super boost is disappointing. But no, they can't be complacent. As I said, they're the business I admire most. We'll discuss them more when we talk about the US, but they're a brand that I do admire. They're innovative, but they're not complacent. And I think that the coach team are pretty damn switched on, and they want to make sure they've worked damn hard the last sort of 22, 23 or whatever it is to get where they've got. And they're not going to give it up without a fight, because they can't be complacent. And you've seen, I think it happens in any industry, that sort of the complacency can kick in. They are hugely cash generative. They've got an amazing global brand, but they don't want to take their foot off the gas. And so they have to be innovative in that regard. And so why wouldn't you sort of buy the loyalty? I'm loyal because I think they've got the best product in market. Others are loyal because maybe it's Ray Winston or the new ads or whatever it's going to be. But if they seem to be innovative and seem to be your friend, they're doing a good job. Yeah.
On a similar note, but perhaps so Sky Bet, I think we talked about Sky Bet before when they made the tweak to the Sky Bet Club, the kind of raising the weekly amount ever so slightly, which is still there, so they haven't reneged on it or anything. But they recently had again, I'm not too sure if this maybe affected or didn't affect you so much, because you're betting on horses and slightly different markets. But they recently did a kind of a big. They advertised quite big on a big Super Boost week, and in the end, just as a casual customer, I thought it fell a bit flat, if I'm honest, because on day 3 and day 4 it was enter a sweepstake to get a free £2 bet, and I don't know. I wonder if the Bet365 approach of just offering a massive Super Boost and just having the best product, rather than that big campaign, and in the end it was like, it didn't really affect my betting week. I didn't change my schedule for it, despite you promising this big Super Boost week for a month. Again, I don't know if you have any specific views on that, but that's something I found with Sky Bet probably wasn't. It fell flat.
Yeah, I must be sort of impartial here, but I have my account closed, so I was no. Again, that part,
so it didn't really affect you at all.
It didn't really affect me at all. But yeah, from what you say, yeah, there's a way and a means. And what are they doing? What's the rationale for using that rather than just, as you cite the Bet365 example? Is it that sort of the data you've been trying to analyze? Okay, if we have people more retained on a daily basis, they're going to be more likely and more valuable customers over the next period. I'm sure the data scientists and the big department of data scientists and that business was doing that for a reason. And they'll assimilate the data, and that maybe that comes back again, or they'll look at what Bet365 did and said, okay, we'll do that instead next time around.
Yeah,
it's always intriguing. Yeah,
it is intriguing, and I think probably we can only really speculate, which is exactly what we're here to do, sort of converse on it. But as you say, we don't quite really don't truly know what's going on behind closed doors. I think there's a lot we can talk about with the US, which we mentioned earlier. But one more thing I wanted to talk about in the UK, which equally applies in the US, and probably even more so with ESPN Bet. Spoiler alert: we're going to talk about ESPN later on. But I wanted to get your take on the UK side at first on kind of sports betting and sports media convergence, because it's something we've covered a lot recently. And an example you have in the UK is like kind of Live Score Group and Virgin Bet. Just kind of live score. If you want to get your, if you want to see who scored in the Eredivisie and Premier League in Azerbaijan, live score or flash scores will you get it straight away. But
it should be 365 scores.
Yeah,
I was an investor in that business.
I think Entain bought that recently.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
So okay, but that in fact. That's exactly a similar example. It's Entain getting involved in that. In terms of that convergence, do you have any overarching thoughts? Because something the Live Score Group CEO said to us on the GI Huddle was, it's a great way for two. I think he said two struggling business models, and I don't necessarily want to say that sports betting is struggling, but the margins are thin in sports betting, and the margins are thin in sports media. The two together, can we get bigger margins effectively?
1 + 1 = 2.25 or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's logical, and we'll discuss the US one in the meantime a bit later. But yeah, why not have a dance partner with whom there is audience overlap? There's a natural affinity of products of what you've built and created. You spend a huge amount of energy and resources to create something. Why not come together? It makes sense. I mean, it's funny. There's media partnerships and then there's media partnerships. Because you see a lot of actually affiliates are operating these media partnerships. And when you think, well, hang on, what sort of bakery news and sports betting got to do together? Like, come on, what? Live Score, Virgin Bet, okay, that's just a no-brainer, frankly.
Yeah,
it's a logical move, but
you got slightly left field. You got TalkSport Bet as well. That's a good example of. Don't know how that's going to go in the market, but big readership. They already deal with bookmakers. Comes together.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because it's a challenge that there's the assumption, and I know particularly in the US, there's all sorts of things going on in the US where people look at it and going, oh my God, they've got such an amazing database, they're just going to immediately convert. Doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you've built up a brand over many years where there potentially has been no association with sort of betting with that product or brand or the industry is different because this is sort of a relative sports industry. It does make sense. But to do that conversion, because users may think, okay, I love these guys for whom what they are. That is me as an audience participant for radio, sports radio, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bet with them. Sorry, I've got 4 accounts with these guys who I've used for many years. I know who they are, and what's going to make these guys better than that? So it's that conversion which is key, and a real challenge. And I really fundamentally believe that it's a bit like sort of when I have my investing, I'm seeing all these other decks, and you look at it, and on paper it makes a world of sense, but it's the execution that is always of absolute paramount importance. And you can have where you think this is the perfect captive audience. You couldn't get a better audience. Still to convert them. Yeah. And I'd sort of cite the whole Barstool thing.
Yes.
And maybe we sort of can discuss sort of US and Penn and ESPN and everything, because it's sort of, is it Barstool Mark II? You've got what should be the perfect audience.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating that you haven't actually been able to convert it.
Yeah.
And it's the assumption. It's better. it's Barstool, it's going to be Fanatics as well. All these brands in the American market with mega sort of backers, super uber celebrities at their helms, and saying, "Hey guys, we're just going to convert. It's going to be easy. Follow me, convert to sports betting, easy."
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, I think you've made the transition. We've hopped across the Atlantic there now. I think we're there. We're going to talk about the US. I'm cautious to not sort of make a point, and you come up with a really good counterpoint, and then I just nod along and say, you're spot on. But that is a good point. The biggest weakness has been that conversion, and we've seen examples with. I guess you could say smaller scale companies. So maybe they didn't quite have the scale. So Fubo Sports and Maxim Bet and things like that. Fubo Sports is interesting because we spoke with Scott Botero, who was CEO at the time, and he's convinced the model works, and it just needs one big name to come along and really nail that model. And then he sort of, he couldn't help but say, well, look, it didn't work at Fubo because he can't argue that it did because they've shut the sports betting brand, and he was making no bones about it. But shortly after I had that interview with him, ESPN Bet, the announcement came, and it's like, is this the big name that is going to change everything? But of course, as you say, they already tried it with Barstool. They did it.
Yeah.
So let's hear your take on, how did you feel when I was playing FIFA when I saw an email saying ESPN Bet came in? That was such big news to me.
EAFC 22 or something. Or was your 20?
Yes. Well, it was FIFA at the time. FIFA 23. I was playing FIFA 23, Sports 24, which will be, and I was. It was 11 p.m. But during the day in America, that email distracted me so much. I just lost every game and thought, nah, I'm going to cover the story. How did you feel when you saw ESPN Bet? Wow, okay, it's happening. It's finally happening.
No, I just thought, oh God, Penn are doing it again. You think, is Lightning going to strike twice?
Yeah,
big
money,
the
big
excitement
investment.
It's a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money. And yes, they got a sort of premier mark of a brand, but they did it before with Barstool.
Mm-hmm.
And that should have been the captive audience. That should have been the perfect audience to convert. Perfect audience. Did it work?
Mm-hmm. Well, and they sold it back for $1 as well.
I know, exactly. and okay, that could be a function of many things in terms of the tech stack and also who they're dealing with. And ESPN will probably be a bit more serious now, and it depends how they actually push it. But again, it's no guarantees at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guarantees. It's like better. Do you the Jake Paul the one?
Yes, yeah, of course. Well, I know your stance on micro betting, which is obviously his big thing. So So I'm it's a skepticism, I think, that you perhaps would lean towards, or maybe very clearly are leaning towards at the moment with ESPN. But
I just think it's just hard. As I said, there's often a case when you think it's too good to be true, it often is. It nearly always is. And you would think, right, ESPN audience, you're going to convert. They're all going to convert. And I guess if you're Penn, you're going to look across this side of the Atlantic and go, well, look what Sky Bet did.
Mm-hmm.
They made it work. They made it work very well. Mm-hmm. So this is what's going to be fascinating as to whether Penn can have that sort of, is it going to be a Barstool Mark II, or is it going to be, hey, Sky Bet Mark II?
Yeah. Which
in that case, then it's going to be a totally different story. And then it'll be quite exciting. And again, it'll be better sort of, for me, for the industry, because you talk about the duopoly of FanDuel and DraftKings, and the others to get any sort of breakthrough. But I think that would be, it's really fascinating.
It really is.
I do lean that I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But I'd love to be proved wrong, because it'd be good for affiliates ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Not to say that I'm naturally leaning towards the other way, but perhaps a counterpoint. You mentioned FanDuel, DraftKings. What ESPN does have is quite a large fantasy database. So you've got that convergence that we touched on earlier, but you do perhaps have maybe a ready database that you could convert, which FanDuel and DraftKings did successfily. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's a credible argument. It's all in the wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's not to say that I'm here and going aside of saying ESPN Bet is going to be the new market leader. Right now, it's very clearly FanDuel. Even though, actually, if we did, I don't know if we would just talk about those two individually. DraftKings, I've been impressed by their gains this last year or so, and they're almost profitable as well. That's almost came out of nowhere when you saw some of the losses in Q1 and Q4 and.
I think it was JP Morgan this week coming out with doffing that cap.
Yeah.
It's looking impressive and encouraging. And yeah, come 2026, this could be something pretty damn major. So yeah, they're doing something right. They spent a lot of money doing it. Spent a huge amount of money doing it. But yeah, you attain that loyal, sticky audience for the long term. You're laughing.
Yeah, and I think that you touched them briefly, Fanatics. Very interesting to see how that plays out. So that's it's a similar concept of cross-selling, but it's quite out there. It's sports merchandising, but it's a massive company. So quoted as sort of worth 30 billion. They bought PointsBet, and early signs in the states that they're live, they're sort of settling for sort of third or fourth place in the market. So already jumping above. I think they're getting more app downloads than Caesars. I think less than BetMGM.
Yeah.
Although if you combine them with PointsBet, they then overtake BetMGM. So it's a decent starting point, I think, at least.
Correct, but are they going to convert into actual valuable customers? That's the other aspect, because already about download.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's funny how you go back sort of 2 years and it's like all about the downloads and all about sort of kind of acquisition and how many we've got. But actually now it's about what is the value of your audience? What is the value of that customer? And are we going to see them actually provide to the bottom line of Fanatics? I think that's going to, it's going to be fascinating how it works, because there's always been this assumption that this big behemoth and they will do that conversion, that execution, converting of that audience into a valuable customer. And the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see and give it a year and let's see where they are.
Yeah, I think that point is very valid with DraftKings. Something that you said when you spoke to me. I can't remember I guess it would be a few months ago when you were saying that aggressive marketing is now toning down somewhat in America, and DraftKings have what they made very clear in Q2 was that they looked at profitability and they cut back on some of those offers and, as you say, converting and retaining. And they're not quite profitable yet, but they've made as we've just said, huge gains.
It's coming. It ain't going to be long, and it's that sort of business where it'd be hard to foresee them then not being in profitability going forward once they've got that massive database. Invest in the short term and reap the rewards in the long term. It's a classic model, particularly in this industry.
So if I'm to put you on the spot, and let's say as Will Armitage, the person, not BestOdds the affiliate, because you have partners, so. I'm hoping you can answer the question without, and we make it clear that this is not the company saying this is going to happen. Let's say this time next year, who's gonna win the year, sort of? Because if we talk about winning the year, that sounds weird.
Like but employee of the month sort of thing. Let's do employee of the month. So,
like I'd say right now it's DraftKings. That's what I'd say. But let's say this time next year. Is it ESPN Bet, DraftKings, FanDuel, Fanatics? Would if you have to pick an employee of the month?
Keep going. Who else would you?
Oh,
I know what I think it's going to be.
365. Yeah. It's interesting that I think it's almost Freudian for me there. It's interesting that I didn't mention 365 because that's that sort of slow rollout in the US and just tightening the screws a little bit and maybe. So you would pick 365. Maybe you can tell us why.
I think 2024 they're going to be in more states, and I just think they're a brilliant business. They've been in this longer than any of the DraftKings or FanDuels in this world.
Yeah,
I think they understand. They're hugely data driven. Got a very impressive team behind them, and they got an excellent product. And therefore, I think they have the ingredients that they don't take anything for granted. It's not, hey, we are another major household name who may have presence on the strip in Las Vegas, and the assumption that because you are that, you will therefore win. I think they just sort of knuckle down, produce a very good product, get their brand out there, get their name out there, and this is a long-term strategy. And maybe they won't be sort of an A on the report card, maybe, but it could be a B plus. Maybe that's another A that I haven't sort of considered yet, and maybe better by some miracle become a mega brand and they deserve the A next year. I think unlikely, but let's see. Bet365 will be up there. They'll definitely be sort of just bet, I would think.
Well, okay, and it's interesting you say they don't take things for granted because rewind 15 minutes. That's what we were saying about their super boosts in the UK, where they already got a leading position, and as you say, the proof is in the pudding. They're not taking things for granted. If we were to, let's say, maybe lower down on the scale in terms of report cards, Caesars and BetMGM, how much hope do these sort of land-based mammoths have in the US with a lot of investment when you've got 365, Fanatics, FanDuel, DraftKings, and also just a small example of, say, WinBet, and another massive company actually scaling back the markets there in online? Like, how do you assess kind of, I guess, those legacy brands and what hope they have in the online market?
Well, if we'd been speaking 2 years ago, I'd have said these are the ones who are definitely going to have the potential to challenge the top two, that duopoly. But you look where we are 2 years later, and they are just mid-table mediocrity in essence, which is unfortunate for them because I fundamentally believed in their potential to really break into that. I guess if you're in their shoes, more competition around you may boost performance, may also make people shop around for more accounts, because I think, certainly because as an affiliate, one can say that we would have expected Americans to have more accounts across more sports books at this stage. And I think there's an aspect of loyalty and sort of fidelity to a brand that certainly is a bit surprising.
Yeah,
that people haven't really gone out and gone, no. So I think therefore it's going to be sort of harder to persuade people away from sort of multiple brands. But with time, you'd anticipate that sort of people will shop around, will have a few more accounts. And I think that if you are a Caesars or a BetMGM, you'd be hoping that your Fanatics and ESPNs do create some breakthrough in the market, not only to take a bit from the top guns, but actually maybe get people to be aware there are more options. I mean, we cited in the UK, again, I don't know what the figure is, but it's absolutely crazy how many different sports brands are in the sport sort of betting sphere in the UK. Somebody told me there was something like 13,000 in Belgium or something, which I just can't believe. I mean, that might be totally erroneous. But I mean, how you can reach a figure like that.
Yeah, how could you shop for the best offer? It would take you a day to get one.
Grid would be
market.
amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly. But on a serious note, maybe in the US you would see then, therefore, 4, 5, 6 brands in that mid-10. You'd hope that if I'm season BetMGM, you kind of want that to happen. As long as it's going from the jalopy rather than yourselves. I think the issue for them would be if Fanatics and ESPN then take market share from them, as well as the top two. Where season BetMGM is hope they can have some aspect of loyalty from their user base. People start checking out from the DraftKings and FanDuels to the ESPNs and Fanatics. And if that creates the landscape where actually then people do, instead of having 1 or 2, they have 3 or 4, you'd hope if you're BetMGM or Caesars, then actually you can start getting pick up in that. I hadn't really thought of that, but it's a rather convoluted answer, so I apologize.
Oh no, a lot of what you said makes a lot of sense, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what I think is going to happen too. I think it's, as you said, it's just a fascinating landscape. Possibly, hopefully, when we were talking about the UK, we were enthusiastic, but I think it's probably natural that it's just so much buzz about the US market right now. It's like a burgeoning market. The UK quite well established. But MGM, as you say, was a little bit left field at the entrance. But we roughly know what we're getting with the UK. But in the US, it's it fuels conversation like this.
The crystal ball is cloudy. It really isn't.
Yeah, absolutely,
it's not clear.
Absolutely, and I'm still thinking about, like I said, why it was that Bet365 didn't come to the front of mind for me, because we talk so much about the FanDuels, the DraftKings. But I think it's a valid point not to forget that this is a market leader. They have the product, have the knowledge, and absolutely nothing stopping. Huge market share.
Pass or pass, as they say. Just exactly. They're in this. They want to be big in 2030.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why spend everything now to try and be big in 2024? No, it's. Think Florida, California, Texas show no signs of legalizing anytime soon. You've got the conundrum in Florida with will they, won't they? Is it not? It's just terribly complex. And so Bet365 just gently.
Very good point. And I think a good note to wrap up for us. As always, thank you very much for your time and your answers, Will. I think that every time we sit down for one of these, something exciting happens. UK and US this time, because say BetMGM. But enjoy speaking with you, and I'm sure we'll do this again soon with even more surprising level of M&A or something that's going to catch us off guard.
And I saw all before. I'm sure. Look forward to it.
Well, exactly right. See you then, and speak to you soon.
All right, mate. Have a good weekend.